tens of thousands of rock songs made since the genre's inception in the early 20th century, there are bound to be instances of plagiarism within the industry, whether intentional or not. Musicians can only come up with so many melodies and song structures that soon, one way or another band or artist will end up copying an already existing song to some degree. Plagiarism is a big no-no when it comes to artistic creations, including music, so musicians copying another has led to numerous legal battles throughout history. But the real reason why plagiarism is a huge problem is because the original artists can be robbed of millions of dollars simply because someone else used their music and profited from it. So what are some of these instances of rock musicians copying someone else? Stick around as we count down the 10 famous instances in rock music that you wouldn't believe. Queen and David Bowie versus Vanilla Ice. 1981 featured some of the best music collaborations in rock history when two of the genre's heavyweights worked on a song together. Queen and David Bowie's status as rock titans are undisputed, so it was a pretty big deal when they came together for the track Under Pressure. The song was a hit when it was released and remains one of the most well-known tracks in both Queen and Bowie's catalog. But a year later, rapper Vanilla Ice took the song's famous bass line and turned it into the foundation for his own hit song, Ice Ice Baby. For the younger generation, this song's lyrics became the go-to whenever that Under Pressure bass line starts playing. The use of Queen and Bowie's song wasn't subtle either. Vanilla Ice directly lifted the instrumental and rapped right on top of it. The legal representatives for Queen and Bowie threatened to sue for copyright infringement, which ended with an out-of-court settlement. However, in 2017, Vanilla Ice claimed that he purchased the rights to Under Pressure from Queen's Brian May to avoid a legal battle between Queen and Bowie, which would have cost him more. The New Seekers versus Oasis. Oasis made a splash on the music world in 1994 when they released the album Definitely Maybe, which featured the song Shaker Maker. Observers pointed out that the song's opening melody is similar to the New Seekers' 1971 tune, I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. That version started as a Coca-Cola jingle and eventually became one of the New Seekers' biggest hits. Oasis co-founder Noel Gallagher has stated that he wanted to pay tribute to the music of his childhood by imitating the New Seekers' melody for Shaker Maker. But this did little to prevent the New Seekers from pursuing legal action. It was reported that both bands settled the dispute for $500,000. Led Zeppelin versus Willie Dixon. Even the mighty Led Zeppelin fans have faced accusations of plagiarism, and it's for two songs from their 1969 album, Led Zeppelin II. The intro and outro for Bring It On Home was copied from Sonny Boy Williamson's song of the same title, written by Willie Dixon. Meanwhile, Whole Lotta Love lifted some lyrics from the Muddy Waters song, You Need Love, also written by Dixon. As a result, Dixon sued the band not once, but twice. The first lawsuit in 1971 was for copyright infringement, while the second was in 1985 over songwriting credits for Whole Lotta Love. Both disputes were settled out of court for unknown amounts, although it's presumed that the price for both settlements was pretty high. The Beach Boys versus Chuck Berry. This case is one of the first known instances of plagiarism in rock history. The influence of good old rock and roll on the Beach Boys' music is very apparent, and among the many artists they took their inspiration from is blues pioneer Chuck Berry. However, the band took their homage to Berry to another level with their song Surfin' USA. The band has never hidden the fact that they copied Berry's song Sweet Little 16 and added new lyrics, saying that Surfin' USA was their tribute to the blues legend. Unfortunately for them, Berry considered it an act of plagiarism and sued the band in 1963. The Beach Boys, who worshipped Berry like a saint, wanted none of the smoke and surrendered Surfin' USA's publishing rights. Creedence Clearwater Revival versus John Fogerty. For those who can't see what's wrong with that heading, John Fogerty is one of the founders of Creedence Clearwater Revival. CCR's legendary career as a band came to a halt in 1972, and the resulting breakup was a mess. Fogerty's exit was so bad that he refused to perform CCR songs for 15 years after he left and went solo. In 1985, Fogerty released his album Centerfield, which featured the song The Old Man Down the Road. CCR and their label, Fantasy Records, went after Fogerty, claiming that his song plagiarized the CCR track Run Through the Jungle. But guess what? Fogerty also wrote and performed Run Through the Jungle. However, Fantasy owned the publishing rights to the original song, which was the basis behind their lawsuit. Fogerty countered by demonstrating live in court, complete with his guitar, that the two songs are different. The suit ended in 1994 when the judge ruled in his favor. Radiohead versus Lana Del Rey. In 2017, Lana Del Rey's album Lust for Life featured the track Get Free as its closing number. Radiohead noticed that the song sounded similar to their 1992 breakthrough single Creep and apparently wanted 100% of the publishing. In a tweet, Del Rey said her legal team offered up to 40% of the rights, but Radiohead was unwilling to accept anything less than 100. A couple of days later, Radiohead's publisher Warner Chappell released a statement refuting Del Rey's claims. The statement said that the band did not threaten legal action and did not say they will only accept 100% of the publishing. They did mention, though, that a representative from Warner Chappell has discussed the matter with Del Rey's team. Later, both parties settled the dispute, though its details were never revealed. During a performance at Lollapalooza in Brazil in 2018, Del Rey casually alluded that the legal battle between her and Radiohead had ended. Chuck Berry versus the Beatles. Chuck Berry's second entry in the list has him going toe-to-toe with none other than the Beatles. When John Lennon penned the song Come Together and showed it to his bandmates, Paul McCartney noticed similarities to the Chuck Berry song You Can't Catch Me, so he suggested slowing the tempo. But when the Beatles released Come Together on their 1969 album Abbey Road, the tempo change wasn't enough to hide its similarity to Berry's song. Morris Levy, the owner of the publishing rights You Can't Catch Me, went after the Fab Four in court. But this case is different because rather than having Lennon pay up, Levy wanted him to record covers of more Chuck Berry songs. He thought of having Berry's songs covered by a musician as famous as Lennon would be a good business move. However, Lennon didn't follow through with the agreement. George Harrison versus the Chiffons. Speaking of the Beatles, George Harrison makes his second appearance on this list, as the Quiet Beatle has also been accused of ripping off a song by the Chiffons. In 1970, Harrison became the first Beatle to score a solo hit with the track My Sweet Lord. However, it was soon pointed out that the song bore a striking resemblance to the 1962 song by the Chiffons, He's So Fine. The Chiffons' hit was written by Ronnie Mack, and in 1971, his publisher, Bright Tunes Music Corporation, sued Harrison for plagiarism. The case didn't go to court until 5 years later. In 1981, the court ruled that Harrison had subconsciously plagiarized the Chiffon song and was fined $587,000. Joe Satriani versus Coldplay. Coldplay's epic and bombastic single, Viva La Vida, was a smash hit in 2008 and became one of the band's most popular songs. But that same year, the song would be under the legal microscope when guitar virtuoso Joe Satriani sued the band for plagiarism. Satch felt that Coldplay's song had a lot of parts that were lifted from his own song, If I Could Fly. Because of this, the guitarist wanted the profits from Viva La Vida. Due to the popularity of Coldplay at the time, the lawsuit became a high-profile affair in the music industry. However, a judge dismissed Satriani's claims and both parties settled the issue out of court. The Verve versus the Rolling Stones. Arguably the most damaging case on this list, the effects of the legal battle between the Verve and the Rolling Stones lasted for almost 20 years, and songwriter Richard Ashcroft millions of dollars over that period. In 1997, the Verve released their single, Bittersweet Symphony. The song became massively popular and is considered one of the definitive tunes of the 90s and the Verve's signature song. The track featured a sample from an orchestral cover of the Rolling Stones song, The Last Time. While the band got clearance from the owner of the orchestral cover, they didn't get clearance from the owner of the song's original version, Alan Klein. Since the 60s, Klein had a reputation as an aggressive business manager whose ruthlessness resulted in many legal battles. Klein, who owned the rights to the Stones' pre-70s material, refused to license The Last Time to the band. A lawsuit followed, which resulted in Mick Jagger and Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones getting songwriting credits for Bittersweet Symphony, and Klein getting 100% of the royalties. Meanwhile, Ashcroft received a measly $1,000 for the song. The tragedy of this case is that Bittersweet Symphony continued to be popular long after it was released, but since Klein was entitled to the royalties, he was the one who profited off the Verve song instead of Ashcroft and the rest of the band. According to Billboard's estimate, by 2019, Bittersweet Symphony would have made Ashcroft $5 million richer had he not lost the royalties to Klein. The Stones eventually returned the royalties and songwriting credits to Ashcroft in 2019, a decade after Klein passed away, but the damage had already been done. Musical plagiarism comes in various forms and degrees, and can be accidental or deliberate, but it doesn't change the fact that copying another artist's work is a serious offense that costs a lot of stress, a tarnished reputation, and possibly millions of dollars.